Hi, everybody. I said I would start at 12:01. We have about a third of the people that signed up showing up, so I think you're all on lunchtime. If you're on the East Coast, we already know that chances are you're eating your lunch while you're hanging out with us. So we're perfectly comfortable with not getting to see you. Although we'd rather see you if you ask a question or make a comment, or if that's uncomfortable. Thanks, Ruben. If that's uncomfortable, then put some stuff up in chat. Greg is here. He's having he's on the road, so his internet is going in and out. But he will catch up to me if I'm missing stuff in chat or if I'm missing. Oh, thanks, Anita. If I am missing a comment that you're trying to make, so I will. And you're seeing me looking over to my right. That's me keeping an eye on the chat and the participants and you guys' faces. All right. Couple more housekeeping things because we have some new people joining us today. One is that we do these as a discussion. We would really rather have a conversation with you than sit here and present at you. So we hope that you, however you want to say something back, most of our audience are prospect researchers, so we tend to stay on the chat, and that's okay. And so please do. And if you're like, wait, I didn't get that, or I don't understand that, or I have something, that's perfect for us. We love that. Okay. All right. So I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Marianne Pelletier. I am Greg told me that I'm the managing director of Stop Hell Analytics Group. He gave me that title. Greg?
I'm not sure if I was the first one to say that or not.
No, you gave me that title. I
But
remember.
I'm Greg Duke. I'm the database partner for and I work mainly in databases and kind of back end stuff, but I also have worked in campaign planning and such things as prospect identification and capacity ratings. So, yes, welcome to our meeting.
And Ruthie, you arrived just in time to say hi. Unmute.
Sorry.
No worries.
Hi, I'm Ruthie Giles. I'm the partner for prospect development here at Stop Hell Analytics Group. Been working in prospect research and management for over 25 years. My specialty is prospect management. Like to do things like clean up your portfolios, prioritize your prospects, prioritize your pools and your holding pools of prospects, and figure out who are your best prospects to ask next for the big gifts. So that's what I do, among other things.
And I'm the analytics person, so if you ever wonder why somebody is standing someplace counting how many people have glasses on, it's me, and I'll help you figure that out. Okay, but our topic today is campaign planning, because we just finished up the fiscal year, right? And you raise more money than you could ever hope to expect to raise. So rather than rewarding you with a big chocolate cake, your trustees, board, boss, whatever said, how much more can you raise next year, right? And let me find a way to move my slides forward. I move the slideshow out of the way. Okay. So the first thing to know is that campaigns are temporary by nature. And that's the problem, right? So if you've ever read the book Moonshot, one of the things that he talked about was the intensity of getting to this one goal. I don't know if it was the book Moonshot or some article I read that mentioned that the astronauts, when they reached the moon, then they came back, a couple of them had a breakdown. Because it's like, now what, right? The intensity is gone. The war is over, whatever, right? And that's the problem, right? But campaigns by nature are temporary. Even your annual campaign is temporary by nature. You reach the goal, June 30th, July 1st, you have another goal. You're starting all over again with a raw field, right? Capital campaigns should be 5 years long at most. I think that we've started extending them because when we run into economic situations, we extend them. The catch is that when campaign does better than we expected, instead of shortening the campaign, we extend the goal, right? And it's focused. It's supposed to be focused. It's supposed to be focused on a single cause, right? So we just want to raise a whole lot more money because the people that work here want to have a whole lot more money, right? That's what campaigns have become. But actually, it's for something very specific. So we need a new building. We need a new program. We need to raise the endowment so we can retain staff. That is a cause, right? And they should be infrequent. The catch is, even in the 90s, the guys were up there talking about, I went to the prospect, I collected that last $1 million pledge payment from the $5 million campaign gift and said, now let's talk about our next campaign. The guy took his check back and kicked me out, right? And the last thing to know is it's a Herculean effort. And that's one of the things to remember is that somewhere in your campaign year, you need to rest. Greg and Ruthie and I are setting you a miserable example of that. So don't do what we do. Do what we say, okay? And please pop in with questions or comments, including Marianne, this is how you move a slide forward. Okay. So people run campaigns. And this is the thing about campaigns. One of the things that I've experienced in the larger shops that I've been at is that when a campaign is announced and it started, all of a sudden these retirements happen, right? And that's part of it. It's like, I am not going to do, because it's a Herculean effort. I'm not going to do a Herculean effort. I was supposed to coast. So I'll see you later, right? And so the question becomes, can you shift, if you have to start a campaign and you're not used to having a campaign and it's a new concept, you've got to shift the staff into overdrive. How do you do that, right? And so there are lots of approaches to it. One is that you do training. The second is you set very clear guidelines, deadlines. The third is actually you implement new technology as a measurement tool, right? Now, that third one, be careful. I run into a lot of clients and prospective clients who are starting a campaign and starting a database conversion at the same time. And that's when Greg steps in and does his Uncle Greg thing to calm them down. But I don't recommend that because that's making everybody spin and throwing everything up in the air and expecting it to come down as a built out Lego set, right? Right, Greg?
Yes. Running a campaign and cleaning or merging or going from one database to another is a lot on everybody's plate. I've seen institutions try to do it. It never really works that well. So yes, the campaign is something you really want to be able to isolate, as Marianne said, all of your efforts onto.
Thanks. So the other piece is that it's culture. If you have to shift the culture in order to start a campaign, and that's the next piece that we're talking about, right? It's not just retraining and installing systems and that sort of thing. It means that you have to shift some people out. And so this is something that can catch you as a manager, right? We want you to come in and we want you to kick their behinds and we want you to get this thing rolling. We want to do something about it. You go, okay, I have to fire this non-performer. Oh, that hurts. We don't want you to, can you find a way to work with him? If you're in that situation, reconsider your job. Okay. So let's talk about the state of the organization. Now let's talk about some analysis stuff that we can do. All right. The first thing is that under your fundraising umbrella, you have what you're fundraising for, right? Is programs, endowments, building, whether building is like an actual building or systems. One of my first campaigns that I was involved with, we were trying to build a new server for the new CRM that we were installing, right? Special project, some kind of expansion, whether or not people want to admit that it's expansion, and staffing, okay? If you think about all the things that you're raising money for, that's what you're headed for, no matter what kind of organization you are. Okay, to support the umbrella, you're trying to engage people, and that includes branding efforts. You're trying to run annual giving, which is focused on getting unrestricted giving, but it's also focused on building people into a participation, right? So the ladder, the behavior ladder for a donor is engaged, participating, I give to the annual fund, upgrading and renewing, leadership annual giving, and then investment, right? And I'm borrowing from Karen Osborne's work and I'm expanding it a little bit, okay? So then, oh, there's messages going on, sorry. Ruthie has post-traumatic campaign CRM disorder. Sorry. Okay. But the pieces that you do, and then major gifts is investment, right? It's a gift of my assets, right? Events, some people think of events as the end all be all. Planned giving can be part of a campaign. I have seen people make their planned gift as part of the campaign. And so when they died, the library would get rebuilt or whatever, right? And then corporate and foundation relations. Now, what is the issue with this umbrella is that sometimes these departments forget that they're all under one umbrella and they pick fights with each other over territory, resources, and space. Okay. And so if you're in a small shop and you have to do all of this, then God love you, you have to do all of this, but at least you don't have to have fights with the other shops about who gets the new office chairs first. Okay. Now, this is from the book, The Handbook of Research on Nonprofit Economics and Management. It's the first chapter. I was coming back from Thanksgiving. I'm riding in the New Jersey Rail, and I'm reading this first chapter, and I'm underlining everything because this book just totally turned my head around about thinking about nonprofit work. It's not just raise more money, raise more money. It's like, well, where's it coming from? Okay. Now, the first thing is that if most of your gift revenue comes from events, then COVID shut you down, right? And you had to replace it with something. Okay. I did participate in a virtual event. It was very nice. It wasn't quite the same as sitting there eating, the rubber chicken and having people tell me how fabulous the rubber chicken was. Except that me personally, I'm not into that. I'm too introverted to be at an event and make small talk, but that's just me, right? Okay. If you have distributed gift revenue, so not only do you have events, but you also do direct mail and crowdfunding and online giving and all that stuff that goes with annual giving, then you're going to expand the variety of people who can support you, right? And if you're focusing on getting foundations to support you, then you're going to increase that again. And if if corporations become aware of you, you expand that again, right? I've just finished reading a book called Profit First, and one of the things that the book said was, and it's just occurring to me, one of the things the book said was, if you have clients who cost more money to do business with than you're earning in profit, you have to thank them and recommend them to someplace else that would serve them better, right? If you have to lose 3/4 of your year to run one event that gets you 10% of your gift revenue, then you're off balance. You need something that brings at least, if we're doing the 15 cents in program cost to $1 raised, something that brings it at least 7 times what it costs. And not only what it costs in money, but what it costs in staff time. Okay. And so when you think about what is our more distributed, we need to add more fundraising programs. Is there one that you can shed? And I have been assigned to shed, to find out which events were worth keeping and which were worth shedding. And unfortunately, what I said was, you kind of need to, it's not which events don't work well. It's, I attend an event, then I go to reunion. That's what works well. So figure out which events you want to support that'll bring in the most number of people who will then come to reunion. So we found a way to redefine it that works. Okay. Now this is just like figuring out your budget. Okay. So the first piece, and this is where I start adding my Marianneisms into it, right? The first thing is that if you're looking at your campaign, especially your annual campaign, what is repeatable, right? So we work with clients where when they go to do a campaign, they start with the people that were already known as major gifts donors. Major gifts donors have complained that that's going back to the well too many times, right? So what's repeatable in your organization? And so I'm also reminded of a client that I visited where they, the gift processor was yelling because they just got a $25 million gift. And I said, are you uncomfortable processing a $25 million gift? And she goes, no. She goes, how are we going to replace that 25 million next year? You know what I mean? And so that's where her head was. And her vice president was busy going, I'm the greatest, but the thing is like the next year, how are they going to replace that $25 million? So when you do that, talk about when you demonstrate to management and to your board this is what I can raise this year because this is what's repeatable based on our past experience, the patterns of our past experience. This is what was exceptional this year. And this is where you want me to go. And of course, this is where you want me to go, right? Okay. So also, what is the distribution of money that you're getting from corporations and foundations versus individuals? And I'm asking you that because I'm checking the chat in case you guys are chatting back at me. I'm asking that because in good economic times, you can get a lot of gifts from corporations. In bad economic times, it's your individuals who come forward and help out. Okay? Realized bequests are going to become more important simply because the greatest generation is dying and baby boomers are retiring. So just think about that. That whole something $1 trillion that was supposed to be transferred in the 90s still hasn't been transferred yet. Okay. And then what new initiatives are you putting in place? Now, if you took your 10 largest gifts and you figured out where they came from and how you solicited them, that's going to give you information about how to get your 10 largest gifts. Where do your most frequent number of gifts come from? Well, if that comes from that event, if that event that takes 3/4 of the year to build, but only brings in 10% of the revenue, does it bring in 50% of the people who stick around as donors for 5 years? Then you can come back to me and say, Marianne, it's a loss leader, so I'm sticking with it, right? And what is the average increase in giving per person year over year? That's your next piece, right? Are you all ready to do that? Okay, so here's a question. And how is the best way to transition from estate gifts to more immediate gifts as the largest gifts? And so now you're looking for people, Ruben, who want to do an investment in your organization during their lifetime, right? And so that you're a religious organization, right? So it makes sense that your estate gifts would become more important because people are thinking about their, I mean, when I go to church, I'm thinking about my post-life consequence, right? So that's something you may discover that estate gifts is where it's at. And so while the population is aging out, that may work for you. But the next question for you is, who are the people that if you ask them would step up in their giving and make an investment? And then what would that investment be that would excite them enough that they would give it to you rather than say giving it to your local Y or giving it to their alma mater, right? So that's my answer. Did I give you any good ideas? Did I help you out?
Yeah, that was helpful. Thanks.
Sure. Okay. So let's talk about what's repeatable gifts. If you're a cause or a health-based organization, take a look at your giving minus your honorary and memorial gifts, right? So just like Ruben asked, you know what I mean? So I'm going to the ever after, so I'm leaving this for you. Well, I'm a health-based organization. You saved my mom's life. Thanks. Next year, I got other things on my mind, right? Then we want to estimate major gifts based on 5 years. Notice my caveat, right? So the last 5 years were not normal. We had COVID. One of the things that happened during COVID is that people stepped up and made a lot of giving. Not only because we were suddenly getting a lot of money and not spending it on anything, including gasoline, right? But also we were like talking about the survival of humanity, and that was causing us to give. Okay. So if you did 24 to 19, you might be off a little bit. Now, the other thing is that what is a normal situation for you, right? So when I did a public television station, one of the things that I had to assess was the political party of the president, the United States president, because this was a US-based television station, right? And tell them, Democrats, you guys raise more money, Republicans, you guys raise less money. That's something to know, right? So if you're in a situation where, say, most of your donors are hedge fund managers, so you do well when the S&P 500 is escalating at a certain rate, that's something to think about, right? And then we also are working with a retirement community, and frankly, it's realized plan gifts that make up their largest gifts, right? And so that's the problem with realized plan gifts, as Ruben was intimating when he asked this question, is that we can't initiate them and we can't get them to come to fruition. That's up to God, right? Because I'm not going to jail for killing a prospect so I can get his $1 million bequest. I am going to wish him the best and a good and full life so that those wishes can be made for me, right? And then what else is normal for you, right? So one of our attendees today is with a small healthcare cause-based organization that does housing and training for people who have one kind of disability or another, right? What's normal for him? Is it events, right? And what's normal in this economy right now? Is it people are figuring out that we want to engage everyone instead of hiding certain groups of people away? And that's how we feel right now, because we're in an era right now where diversity is very important to us. Okay? Okay. Now, why do you need to know this? Well, if you're setting a campaign goal based on what you need, right? But the campaign goal is higher than the total life giving in all of your database. Where are you going to get all that new money from? Because if in the last 5 years you've raised 1/10 of your new campaign goal, where are you going to get that money from? And that's why, we talk about gift officers leave all the time. Gift officers want to go places where they can succeed. Okay. And so if you push the just do it button on a gift officer without even buying them a pair of Reeboks, right, to go with it, then you're going to lose gift officers. It's that simple. And then you're going to have to restart, right? Okay. If your recent yearly totals come from one-time gifts or one-time donors, you've got to replace that, or you have to figure out a way to state that, right? Remember, in the public companies, they restate their last 3 years and according to their new rules, you've got to restate your results. This is what we raised this year, but you know what? This is what we know we can raise next year. Don't ask us to go what we raised this year plus, because these were exceptional gifts. If you're in the habit of getting exceptional gifts, then you can say over the average of 5 years, we should raise this much in total. So at least you're not year by year hurting yourself, okay? If you are going back to the same major gifts donors over and over and over again, but you're not building new major gift donors, especially from the newly rich, right? The newly rich are younger. They have more variety of color on their skin than we're used to. They also have more diversity of gender. And I don't mean they're also women. I mean more diversity of gender, right? And so when we get to that place and we figure out that we have to learn how to talk to people that we're not used to talking to, we're also not used to saying the right thing. How do I speak to this person who says, I'm a they, right? That's an exercise for us. And that's where we find out who are our people who would rather retire than expand their own skill set to reach that. Okay. But you want to build new connections, and you want to build new connections in a way that's the new way of fundraising. The new way of fundraising, by the way, is headed toward community-based fundraising. You know why? Because like 5 guys hold 90% of the money, right? Jeff Bezos, Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, except Melinda got half. I hope she got half. And they're holding the money.
Mackenzie got half.
Sorry? I'm sorry, Greg.
Mackenzie Bezos got half too.
Yes, Mackenzie.
Oh, I was gonna say Mackenzie Bezos got half.
Yeah, talk about splitting that atom, baby. I love it when wealth gets redistributed, right? So that's the patron system we're in now, like cater, suck up to, honor, cater, suck up to, honor. But community-based fundraising is you bring together a group of people and you invest them in a project. And they give according to what they can. That's where crowdfunding came from. Just remember that it's not that these small elite group of the 1% actually control all the money, because people got tired of that and invented Bitcoin, right? So, and we're starting to do more and more barter these days. So this is the place where we're watching that. I don't know. We're at the place where, I'm not making any more metaphors because I'm about to talk about things being destroyed, but we're at a place where the watershed is happening. The field is going to open up. We want to learn how to talk to more people, and also not in a major gifts kind of way that we do it now, but in a way where we talk to a group of people about making a group investment. Just saying, that's my theory. Okay. Now, how many major gifts can you bring in over the course of a campaign? And a major gift is however you define it. If it's $1,000, it's $1,000, right? And so your team, and if you have one person whose job is to run the shop, do all the communications, figure out the database, and make major gifts happen, that person is never going to get to making major gifts happen. It isn't. That person's going to lean all over the board for that help, okay? So during the campaign time frame, just figure out if you actually have major gift officers and they have full portfolios of 150, and listen to Ruthie's work if you want to know why I'm saying 150, then how many people can they solicit over the time of your campaign? If it's a 1-year campaign, how many people can they solicit in a year, right? Because you have to what is it, qualify, cultivate, right? Okay. And then what if you lose somebody? Because remember earlier, I kept talking about how easy it is to lose somebody, especially when you set incredibly ambitious campaign goals. And the other thing is, what is the maturity of your portfolio? And that's included the maturity of your portfolio. If just everybody's engaged, they love coming to your events, the duck races. Nobody does duck races anymore because it's not good for the river, right? But the engagement events where they just come and they show up. We have something here called Women Swimming, raises a crap ton of money for hospice. But the women who do women's swimming, do they also give to hospice afterwards at other times? I don't know, right? And are any of them making major gifts? My lawyer is one of the women swimming very active participants. I don't know if she makes a major gift to women swimming, right? And then how many prospects have to get added to a portfolio to get to a major gift, in whatever time frame it takes you, and how long does it take you? Is it 1.5 years? Is it 3 years? Or is it 17 years to get from, hello, my name is Marianne, to thank you very much for your pledge of $1 million, right? Questions or comments right now? I'm talking really fast because I'm really excited. Somebody save me. Excellent question. Is donor fatigue something that can be analyzed through analytics? Yes. If there's 2 ways to do it. One, if your database is tracking contact reports, okay, then you've got how long does it take to accept a visit from a gift officer? That's enthusiasm up front, right? But then this question is about the other side. What if I'm tired of talking to you? Okay. The codes would be visit request, and the result would be rejected or refuse. I don't want to talk to you anymore. I've had enough. Also, text analysis, natural language processing in the contact reports. If the gift officers are diligent about writing contact reports and saying, I called him and he said he's not interested, or his focus is on other things, or he feels that we've gone back to the well too many times. And I'm quoting a contact report, right? That I was reading in like 1992. Then that's donor fatigue, right? And so then the next piece is in donor fatigue through the annual fund. If you're asking somebody for $100, then you ask them for 100, then you ask them for 100, then you ask them for 125, and they don't give anything, then that's a reaction to your increased ask, right? We used to do the thing in the 90s. We were trying all kinds of tricks, right? We used to do the thing where we'd call everybody and ask them for $1,000. Well, Babson College did a great presentation on this. They raised a lot more money in total, but they lost a lot of donors. Now, what's the result of that? Is that your well gets smaller, a lot smaller, and you're taking bigger buckets out of it, right? And so what happens, right? I agree. AI might be good for text analytics. If you're willing to, like, I'm not going to put my contact reports up online and have Chat GPT look at it, because then it's going to learn something from me. But Wilford on our team, he talks about, you're confining text analytics to look at only these things and then to forget them. Okay. How are y'all feeling? Oh, excellent question, Jonathan. How do you create a sense of groupness so people will come together to make a group investment? It's a question I hadn't thought about this, but yes, let me expound on what I think, and then I hope other people will pop in and talk about your own experiences, right? What you're reminding me of is that I worked with an alumni director at Cornell, and he said, I don't want to come to my reunion to hang out with my class. I want to come to my reunion to hang out with my swim team. That was his affinity, right? And so the latest thing that we've been talking about in the prospect research realm is interest codes, because we need to understand what people are really interested in. If somebody came to me and said, please support the soccer team at your alma mater, I'd kick them out. because I had fights with soccer players when I was in college. Now, nobody needs to know that. What they need to know is I do analytics. My spouse is an RN. When I make contributions, it's usually to the English department, right? And so those are my pieces. So there are some constituencies that we're just now starting to pay attention to. One of them is the gender diversity community and the sexual orientation diversity community, right? And so one of the things we say is, how do we get the gays to give us more money for our sexuality study program? Well, we're managing to get past the boundary where we have to worry about what danger we put them in by talking to them about it, right? And the thing is how do you get a group of people together and physically together in a room or together on a webinar to talk about, we've launched a new program and we'd like to share it with you, okay? And that's actually how I would do that. I would do that with an event, some kind of launching event, right? Another example is my French professor. When my French professor passed away, she was very instrumental in setting up the language lab at our college. And so when I wrote in a note that said, I was distraught that Miss Ware passed away, that was awful. And I got back an immediate note that says, we hear you, we miss her too. And we started a fund to fund the language lab in her honor. And so, yeah, that got a gift out of me. So how do you bring people together is, what's that coalescing theme? So Jonathan, if you feel comfortable, name something that you would love to do on a Saturday where you would do it with a group of people, right? So is it a pickup basketball game? Is it sitting around discussing movies? Is it watching a movie or reading a book? Is it doing a cocktail thing, right? There's a couple of organizations that there's one organization, Chris, maybe you can help me out, that does cocktail. Oh, it's the theater. The reason I'm thinking about Chris is because it's the theater in Elmira near where Chris is, right? Where they do cocktail night. Because if you go to any one of their performances, it's like I'm the youngest person there. Actually, my wife is the youngest person there. You know what I mean? And so they're like, what do I want to enjoy in retirement? New tastes. Okay. Okay. We've got some comments. Okay. This is great. Thanks, Mackenzie. They track affinities, so we can track group folks together in this way based on their occupations. Absolutely. Philanthropic interests. Absolutely. And interest codes. If I say anything on an email that I send to you about, I'm interested in this, you want to talk to me about it, right? But the other piece is that, targeted small group events, right? Because if I'm sitting in a group of people who are not like me, okay? One of the things that I've done is I visited a traditionally Black college. There's an expression for it. I apologize if I'm using language from the 70s. And I was the light bulb.
HBCU.
Sorry. I'm sorry, Greg. I missed that. I was the light bulb sitting in a room full of people.
Ruthie said it's HBCU.
HBCU. Thanks, Ruthie. Okay. Right. And so I'm a light bulb sitting in a room full of people going, what are you doing here? And I just smiled at them and said, I'm visiting. I'm just visiting. I'm visiting. Right. It's, what are you doing on our street? Right. What are you doing in our club? And so if you can create that safe space where they can get together and feel very comfortable and get to know each other, and then the gift officer or the staff who are working with them can make them feel comfortable. It's not the time to talk about your stuff and your needs and how uncomfortable you are working with an audience like that. It's the time for you to bring out somebody who is very comfortable with whatever that audience is. Don't put me in a room full of football players. As much as I would be happy to talk to them about football, I'm not the right person, right? Put me in a room full of divorced women or knitters, right? Okay. And then Greg's got his analytical brain on too. There might be a two-way street of groupness, constituents who give to programs to support their affinity group. But what do constituents give to identify their affinity group? Now I give to what I'm asked for, right? So when I was at Cornell and I was asked for my annual fund gift, I said, you know what? I support lesbian initiatives. And so the answer I got was there's a sexuality collection at the library. And I went, perfect, perfect. And I gave to it. Biggest annual funded gift I ever gave. So what are yours? If you were going to write a list of 3 things, I asked Jonathan, he hasn't come back, I don't think. But if you're going to write a list of 3 things that if somebody asked you to give to it, you'd be all over it, right? What would that be? And it starts with, how do you want to spend your Sunday? Or I am so excited that I'm noted on the Facebook page of this. Like, I love being involved in Habitat for Humanity. It's important to me because of my shelter insecurity when I was younger. Okay. So campaign goals are based on the organization's needs, right? The needs of the most powerful in the organization, right? The changes in the organization's cash flow. Oops. We got a problem. Or a desired new program. Oh, animal shelters. I agree. Actually, one of our statements is we get our cats always from the SPCA, but the SPCA is not part of our donation program. That's curious. I should think about that. Okay. So this is how your campaign goals are based, right? So is this true for all of you all? Go ahead and do a hand thing or. No? Okay. You're like, just keep talking, Marianne. Oh, the community needs. Thank you. Oh, Jonathan came back to me. I'm sorry, buddy. I was picking on you. My tiny org is all about bringing people together in the same place around topics of shared interest, but they tend to see $5 as the appropriate gift. Oh, you've got a case statement problem, Jonathan. You've got the interest thing going, but they feel like they just make a $5 donation and that paid for their social time or that paid for their coffee that you gave them or that, you know what I mean? That was enough. They don't know that it's not $5 is not enough, right? So, so you need to make a case statement. So as part of this group, you can talk about this is how much it costs to support one recipient, right? And that's going to help raise the bar. Yeah, I know, right? I agree with Ruthie. Just say to them, it's your case. Where you are is your messaging. How you say to them what I need from you in return. Okay, so good job. Good job. You already got the affinity groups going, and the rest of us are trying to figure all that out. In the 60s, 70s, 80s, we were trying to figure out how to trick people into things, right? And in the 90s, it was about, you owe, and you're supposed to be 1,000-point light. Now we're like, hey, do you feel like this? So good job. You already conquered that piece. Okay. What campaign goals should be based on, and I'm saying this because this is the service that I offer, is the capacity of the pool, the attractiveness of the projects that need funding, and the likely raisable amount. And we've done this work for clients. This is how much we think you can raise based on your current pool. So if you want another $2 billion, where are you going to get that money from? Okay. Now, the attractiveness of the projects needing funding, believe me, there's nothing wrong with raising a whole lot of money for the new swimming pool and then charging the swimming pool rent for parts of the other organization for programming. It has to be reasonable, right? It has to be reasonable. But what it is you're trying to say, this is why, right? This is why. So for the Habitat, when we were raising money for staff salary just wasn't going to cut it. But raising money to finish building that house was totally going to cut it because people had a house they could go look at. And, we brought the donuts and they did the clip, the ribbon thing. And, it was very exciting. Right. So how do you do that? Right. And how do you flex from capacity to goal? Okay. The first thing you do, just like with anything, is if you want me to raise an extra $1 billion, whatever that difference is, this is how many new major gifts prospects I need. So I need 4 prospects to get 1 major gift. So I need 4 times the number of gifts that I need. Now you tell me where they're going to come from, right? And so this comes back to Jonathan's question. What if there are people who come to Jonathan's events, chip in the $5 because they think that's appropriate, and then he does a screening and goes, oh, this person gives $10,000 to blah 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 that's like us. So we need to ask him, her, to a private conversation, or we just need to talk about $10,000, right? The other thing is which volunteers or connectors, if you've read the book, This Big Point, connectors, you have in your database who will do that work for you if you ask them. And that's the thing that we forget, right? It's not like, oh, people will give if they want to. That's what people tell us. That's their way of saying no. People will give when you ask them, right? And then what is your case statement that says, this is the importance of this? One of my favorite case statements was, if you support music, children who play music tend to do better in math and science. And guess what kind of people you need for your computer company, right? Perfect. Perfect. Also, we support music. So how virtuous are we, right? Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Questions or comments at this point? What time is it? Oh, I've got 18 minutes. Greg is cutting in and out. Greg is traveling, but he's still joining us. So he, like Ruthie and I, are not setting you an example of taking downtime to recover or get ready for the next campaign. Okay. Now, of course, I'm going to recommend data science because that's what I do. Where you sit is where you stand, right? But what is your ratio of new prospects that your team asks for, right? New prospects that your team goes and works, whether it's annual fund, like we solicit 100,000 people for direct mail, or 10,000 people or 1,000 people for direct mail, and we get this percentage back in gifts, right? What is it? What do they respond? What's your percentage of response? Because once you have the percentage, you can multiply that out to find out how many prospects you have to start with, right? And if it's larger than the size of the country that you're in, you have to share that with the people who do the why can't you just pounding on the table thing, right? Modeled or through screening or both, right? So you take your screening results and you do some modeling work. We can get an additional blah, blah, blah out of them, given the ratios we've already discussed. This is how many are under cultivation for this amount. This is your gift tree, and then how many you need, right? This is your campaign gift chart. Who are your VIPs not yet in cultivation? And who are your annual giving donors who are giving the major gift level and you want to leave them there? Or you want to move them up and ask them to make a 5-year commitment to the campaign at double, okay? And then what are the characteristics of your top major gifts prospects? That is not a verbal conversation with people who solicit major gifts prospects. That is an analytics question. If you sit around and have a verbal conversation, they're going to say, our best prospects are, white, middle-aged men who look and act like me. If it's gift officers like that, right? Okay. And then you can figure out what your pool can produce. Does anybody have questions on this slide? Because I plowed through it because I love this stuff. I make 2 pots of coffee. I drink the second pot over the course of the day. Are you excited? You gonna go do this math? Should I just move on? Okay. I'm not going to make you sit here and wait. All right. Oh, who should be considered VIPs? Just board members. Okay. So to me, a VIP can be defined in a lot of ways. So I love that question. Thank you. Amitha. Oh, tell me if I pronounce your name correctly. I need to practice pronouncing names that are not from romantic languages. So I appreciate your being here to help me with that new skill. Okay.
Your
So
pronunciation was just right.
oh, thank you so much. Thank you. Who should be considered VIPs? Here's the thing. Let's say that I'm going to Jonathan's events. So one of my memberships is the Adirondack Center for Writing. So I can picture just when Jonathan said he gave us this scenario, I pictured that. I'm sitting around on a bunch of couches at the Adirondack Center for Writing. And we're talking about the importance of something kind of novel, right? And at the end of the event, you know, they pass the hat around, whatever the pass the hat around looks like. And I throw in $5 because I think that's really generous considering I put $1 in at my house of worship, right? Which I've been doing since my childhood, right? So, okay. So the person who's running this is like thinking, how do I get that going? All right. So let's say he does, and I'm thinking of a specific gentleman, a screening on everybody who attends these events. And he discovers that I'm actually a multimillionaire. I'm not, by the way, I'm actually a multimillionaire. And I tend to give $10,000 to certain causes that are about supporting the growth of people, right? Civic involvement. Now I'm a VIP. Okay. So it's not just your board members. It's your board members. It's people who have leadership positions in your community. If you're community based, it's people who are connectors, who have a whole lot of LinkedIn friends and special friends and can get you in front of things. WealthX, the WealthX guys sold WealthX, and then they started WealthQ. I don't know if they're going down in the alphabet or if they're going to do, you know, if they're picking the letters based on something else. Well, Q is we have these billionaires in our database. Who are their billionaire friends? Those are VIPs. So does that help? Okay.
I guess X was a trendy letter back in the day, and now it's Q.
Yeah, I think they call it wealth quotient. So maybe they picked Q. I don't know. I hung out with them for a day and I loved it. I learned a lot. Okay, so Greg is giving us a great example. When Greg arrived at a university, he was told that a certain group of people were bad prospects. Yeah, I've spoken to colleges, especially who are like, well, most of our alumni are teachers, so that's not it. Teachers make money. Okay. Through analytics, he found out that they were their best group of prospects. What is the average gift from them? And is their participation rate higher, right? The development officers based their opinion on a very few loud members with the community. Okay. That's the piece. I actually worked with somebody who ran the parents program and promised the parents they would never be screened. And she had to eat crow, right? But I mean, you know, we all learn. I don't know why I told you that story. Oh, because I love telling that story. Okay, I just had my 30-second seventh grader moment. Okay, so you want to segment your audiences, and this works with annual giving as well as anything else, right? So the first thing is can you segment them by interest? And I think it's Mackenzie who was talking about how they've already figured some of that out, right? Can you segment them by giving pattern, which is what the annual giving program does? Liban, Sibon, you know, renewals, credit card donors, blah, 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 right? Can you sort them by giving vehicle? This person likes to give to me from a credit card, but this other person likes to give stock every year. Okay. And then what is the relationship to specific people in your organization? If my daughter is benefiting from Unity House, then I have a relationship that is stronger than if I am a neighbor to one of the Unity houses. Okay. And then what are the general characteristics of people who are solicited best by? Okay, I always give my example of the engineers who didn't want to have a visit, but they were solicited for $1 million gifts by email because that was comfortable for them. But think about this. If you're creating an event for writers, when I sat there at the retreat for the Adirondack Center for Writing, we were all entirely quiet while the instructor was speaking. You get me in a room full of gift officers, that's not going to happen because they're extroverts. But writers, we absorb, we think, and then we come out with, right? Okay. And then the 4. So what is Marianne best solicited for? Annual giving. Marianne runs a business which has fickle income. Don't ask me for a steady annual gift of something, but do ask me for a gift, right? Or volunteer assignments. Okay. And you can ask me for both. Volunteers should be giving at the level that they're volunteered to solicit for. I learned that at Case a long time ago, and I agree with the guy. Okay. So this is an example. This is I think that I didn't change much of this to take out the client's how to figure out who the client is. This is Greg has a special tool that he uses that figures out what is the biggest ROI you can get for each solicitation method based on modeling, right? And he does it using Excel. He uses an Excel program, right? And so I borrowed that. Sorry.
Of course.
Yeah. Oh.
It's Excel.
Greg and I have an ongoing rivalry between Greg says everything can be done in Microsoft and Excel, and I'm like, no, I want to buy a new toy. So, but that's what you see, this maximize direct mail. What we did was we said people that are best solicited by email look like this. People who are best solicited by direct mail look like this. And by the way, start with this segment, until you run out of budget. We took the client's budget and we maximized what we could get from it. Okay. And then we forecasted major gifts. I did that with modeling. And then I said, you're not pursuing matching gifts, but look at all these matching gift people you have. And then I said, by the way, this is what the person who's running the program says she can get from corporations and foundations. It was cooperative. I didn't present this before I worked it out with the director of major gifts, who said, no, that's a bit ambitious. Let's show me more conservative, right? So that's why it says conservative. But you can do this. I mean, you can do this hiring us, but also you could do this with some work, as long as you look at data first and not opinions. Once you start hammering at opinions, let the reaction, like the trustee reaction and the opinions and stuff, go from there. Okay. Now let's come back to the whole piece about how do we get from $5 to $20. And I really appreciate, Jonathan, that case, that metaphor, so we can crank it out. My voice is getting scratchy, excuse me. So you want to start with your own words, right? So you want to just write out what you need for the campaign. Do all of you have whiteboards in your office? Or capacity for whiteboards or anything? You just want to write out what you need in support for the campaign. One time when I was at the Datatel company, it was like 20 of us, and there was one person in the front of the room, and it was the administrative assistant. She was typing down everything we said, and it was going up on the big screen. Works perfectly, as long as she can keep up with it, right? Then you want to workshop all that language. It's the language with your leadership and volunteers. And you'll end up with a lot of vague cliches. They'll wash the specifics away and put in vague cliches. And then you want to come back to concrete and write bullets. Okay? So let's say I'm working with Habitat for Humanity. 3 houses this year. Building materials, because we no longer get free materials from blah, 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 lumber guys. Donuts for 300 volunteers, because we know we're going to get that many again, right? We're just going to list them. Oh, thanks, Laura. It's good to see you. And Laura, we're going to record this. You'll be able to watch the rest when it's over. See you. Okay. Okay. And then you want to go get comments and posts from your fan base. Whatever you put out on social media, whatever people say in reply, collect their comments. And you can do this. You can. I can show you the fancy way to do this, or you can make your administrative assistant do it while you're on vacation. Collect emails and letters from your volunteers, and then just do a word cloud off that stuff. This Greg was talking about using artificial intelligence. Throw that stuff onto ChatGPT and say, write me a word cloud. It's a lot easier than it ever used to be, right? And this is what I did for Habitat for Humanity, and Habitat's there. But see, volunteers. See this word Slaterville? That was a specific, that's Slaterville Road, where we were building 3 houses out of 1 old house, right? See cookie? People loved our annual cookie walk. I bake 6 dozen chocolate chip cookies and I bring them and they sell them, right? The shed was we built a shed for them to auction off. See the gingerbread, see the weekend, see 1932, that's the address at Ruthie. That's the address at Slaterville Road, right? So notice that Cars for Homes is not as exciting. Communities, yeah, okay. Saturday, this is how I like to spend my Saturday. Okay. Once you have that word cloud, now you're ready to get that. We need 20 from you today instead of 5, because home. Right? What's your word cloud? Okay. And now, of course, I have to show off the fancy tools that I use. There is a macro out there in Excel, Greg, that you can do. You can say, what are the predominant words in these comments and in these reactions, okay? And you can use this fancy stuff where you can say excellent is positive, today is a time, good is positive, Habitat, and it says unknown here. I could recode it as referencing the organization, right? And once I build this is called a lexicon, this type over here. Once I build this lexicon, I can reuse it over and over and over again. And now I'm figuring out what do people care about the most. So when I did this for a small business client, his focus is, Greg, his focus is removing the use of fossil fuels, right? That's what he cared about. But when I did language modeling for him and I said what words were most related to each other, what words really got people excited, the answer was NYSERDA, because that's where they could go get a low-cost loan to do the thing. So what they cared about is, can I get it done with the money that I have? And so that's what he needed to emphasize. And then he could say, and by the way, you get it, you are virtuous, you get your karma points or however you think about spiritual reward by removing fossil fuel use. Okay. What I brag about is not necessarily what I do. Only 4 minutes. Okay. Then you want to staff up. If you're going to do a capital care comprehensive campaign, staff up. And annual giving, the people who want to leave are going to leave. I mean, look at all the job ads that show up in the spring. And then bring in the people that you know are going to help you through the next year. And by the way, the more frontline staff you bring, the more backline staff you need. Do not expect a gift office processor to process 10 times the number of gifts that you were getting last year. Okay? Unless you start doing a cashier cage thing or whatever it's called, right? Then present the budget. If you want me to raise this much, you got to do this. And you have to do it with data and graphs, okay? Start training, design your new dashboards, because you're going to have to know where things are going and how to get there. And what else would you all do? To prepare for a campaign. I know there's at least one person here who is responsible for the campaign. Yes, beefing up operation staff is, we have to have a lot more salesmen than cars. No, you don't. Who's going to do the paperwork when what are you selling if you have 20 salesmen in one car, right? All right, while you're thinking about what else you would put, of course, I have to try to sell you something because we're a for-profit company. In October, we are talking to a major gifts guru how to make an ask, Marcy Heim. We're talking to her. We don't have it solid yet, so don't sign up for it yet because we also don't have the link yet. But here's the thing. We're going to do our FIT conference for this October in Springfield, Massachusetts, is going to be me talking about identifying new prospects through data science, Ruthie talking about how to sort them all out and get them in the place for the major gifts team, and then Marcy talking about how to make the ask. And so we're very excited about our FIT conference for major gifts. Christy says, would take steps to reinforce good internal culture. Yeah, the training piece, right? Support for one another and reduce KPIs or incentives that encourage in-house competition. I agree, Christy. Peter Drucker says what gets measured gets rewarded. So if you get rewarded for collecting more and more for yourself, but shedding responsibility, which happens in nonprofits, right? Then that's what's going to be. I agree, Maggie, identify potential campaign leadership, lead gifts and campaign chairs. And because I'm not a frontline fundraiser consultant, of course, I don't think about that first. But Maggie's right. You have to do the quantitative stuff that I described and the qualitative stuff where you interview the board, you interview the key leaders, you interview the volunteers and those VIPs, whether or not they knew that they were VIPs before you started talking to them. For the dashboards, we recommend our class Power BI. Greg and I built this class, and we're helping you set up your first Power BI dashboard. If you haven't done that yet, Power BI is, I think it's supposed to be a free tool, and that's why more and more nonprofits are using it over Tableau. Okay, I have 12:59. Is that everything? That's everything. I have 12:59. So let me know what else you want to say, comment on. Oh, Chris is right. Need to organize volunteers for every part of the campaign. Right. So, yep, feasibility. Elizabeth, the feasibility piece was that set your goal piece, but also what Maggie said. You also have to figure out what the leadership's willing to give. Right? Your core gift amounts. Okay, we did record this. We're going to drop off, and when we drop off, we're going to trim it and then put it up on our YouTube channel if you're dropping off now. And we hope that we'll see you in Springfield in October.